Hello viewer and welcome to Worldview, a program designed to bring you up to speed with trending developments the world over. My name is Xavier Robert, reaching you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. And on our top stories today, Russia agrees to return 4 Ukrainian children to their families as part of deal brokered by Qatar. Businessman Daniel Noboa to become youngest president in Ecuador's history after winning Sunday's runoff. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office and Hamas deny reports of temporary ceasefire in Gaza. The details of these stories and more in a moment. First, on Worldview today, Russia has agreed to return 4 Ukrainian children to their families as part of a deal brokered by Qatar. The repatriation is part of a pilot scheme to return more of the thousands of children abducted by Russia following its full-scale invasion last year. The youngest child of the 4 is 2 years old and the oldest is 17. Ukraine has said it identified 20,000 of its children taken by Russia. However, the number of those forcibly deported is thought to be much higher. The International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russia's President Vladimir Putin in March, accusing him and his Commissioner for Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, of the unlawful deportation of Ukrainian children. Russia insisted that its motives were purely humanitarian, claiming it evacuated hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian children to protect them from danger, with top officials scorning the indictment at the time. The return of the 4 children will test the scheme worked on by Qatar after it headed talks with Moscow and Kiev, said a diplomat who asked to remain anonymous due to the sensitivity of the process. Away from that, now businessman Daniel Noboa, aged 35, will become the youngest president in Ecuador's history after winning Sunday's runoff. With more than 97% of the votes counted, Noboa, a centrist, had a lead of 4 percentage points over his left-wing rival Luisa Gonzalez. Ms. Gonzalez conceded the election and congratulated Noboa on his win. Now, in his victory speech, Noboa said that he would give back a smile and peace, assassinated just days before the first round of voting in August. The murder rate in Ecuador quadrupled between 2018 and 2022, and opinion polls suggested that security was voters' main concern going into the election. Flanked by heavily armed soldiers, Noboa took to the stage and said that the country will start working for a new Ecuador to reconstruct a country battered by violence, by corruption and hate. While presidential terms in Ecuador are normally 4 years long, this was an early election triggered by the dissolution of parliament by outgoing President Guillermo Lasso. Noboa will serve out the term begun by Lasso, which will end in May 2025. He can then stand for a second term. Supporters of the young businessman took to the streets to celebrate his win. Moving on now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office and Hamas have denied reports of a temporary ceasefire in Gaza to enable humanitarian aid come in and foreigners to leave at the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. A statement from Netanyahu's office said that there is currently no ceasefire and humanitarian aid in Gaza in return for removing foreigners. Hamas official Izzat el-Rashik also stated that there was no truth to reports about the opening of the Rafah border crossing or temporary ceasefire. And well, French President Emmanuel Macron has warned his Iranian counterpart Ebrahim Raisi against any escalation or extension of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Macron particularly cautioned against any overflow of the conflict into Lebanon during a phone call with the Iranian President Macron, also reiterating the need for all to unequivocally condemn the terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas in Israel and Israel's right to defend itself, as well as to eliminate the terrorist groups that have struck at its population. He also spoke of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, reiterating France's position that all measures to spare civilians must be taken and international humanitarian law respected. Moving on now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has returned to Israel after talks in 6 Arab states, hoping to coordinate efforts against Hamas while finding ways to alleviate Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Just 4 days after he paid a lightning visit to Tel Aviv to show solidarity, Blinken landed back in the city and was expected to meet leaders in Jerusalem as Israel prepares a major ground operation in the Gaza Strip. The trip comes as President Joe Biden reportedly considers an invitation to visit Israel to demonstrate further what the U.S. leader has described as unwavering solidarity.
I've heard from virtually every partner was a determination, a shared view that we have to do everything possible to make sure this doesn't spread to other places. A shared view to safeguard innocent lives. A shared view to get assistance to Palestinians in Gaza who need it, and we're working very much on that. Israel has the right, indeed it has the obligation to defend itself against these attacks from Hamas and to try to do what it can to make sure that this never happens again. As I said in Tel Aviv, as President Biden has said, the way that Israel does this matters. Needs to do it in a way that affirms the shared values that we have for human life and human dignity, taking every possible precaution to avoid harming civilians. I had very good conversations both with the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia and here in Egypt with President al-Sisi, and also heard, I think, a lot of good ideas about some of the things we need to do moving forward, including practical.
Still on the crisis in Israel, Energy Minister Israel Katz has said that Israel has resumed the water supply to southern Gaza as 1 million people have evacuated the north of the Strip to escape a massive air assault. Katz said in a statement a week after Israel had stopped supplying water to the entire territory as part of a complete siege on the Palestinian enclave that it will push the civilian population to the southern Strip. He said the decision to resume the supply was taken after talks between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden. Now, UN Security Council members have held difficult talks on a possible resolution over the war between Israel and Hamas, with 2 drafts of the negotiating table. I recall that Russia circulated a draft that calls for an immediate, durable and fully respected humanitarian ceasefire in the war triggered by the October 7 Hamas attack from Gaza on southern Israel. Reports say that the Russian draft strongly condemns all violence and hostilities directed against civilians and all acts of terrorism without mentioning Hamas. But the United States is insisting that the Council condemn the Hamas attacks as an act of terrorism, and a competing draft from Brazil does explicitly do that. In a separate development, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has condemned some incidents at pro-Palestinian matches in Britain, terming it as not acceptable after police made several arrests. Sunak said during a visit to a Jewish school in London that there is no place in their society for anti-Semitism and will do everything to stamp it out. Meanwhile, London's Metropolitan Police Force said that 15 people were arrested at Saturday's pro-Palestinian protest in the centre of the British capital. 3 men were subsequently charged with committing crimes, including a 68-year-old man suspected of making racist comments. In a separate development, Finland's former president and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Martti Ahtisaari has died in Helsinki at the age of 86 after battling Alzheimer's disease, the president's office confirmed on Monday. The current president, Sauli Niinisto, made this known in a statement. According to reports, he served as president from 1994 through 2000. The mediator negotiated an end to conflicts around the globe and Indonesia to Kosovo and Namibia, earning him worldwide recognition and a Nobel Peace Prize in 2008 as part of a formidable career spanning over 40 years. The former UN diplomat was credited with overseeing the 2005 reconciliation of the Indonesian government and Free Aceh movement rebels bringing an end to a 3-decade conflict that killed some 15,000 people. Elsewhere, Liu Liange, the ex-chairman of the Bank of China, has been arrested on corruption charges, according to Chinese media. Liu, who led the state-owned bank from 2019 until March of this year, was arrested by the Supreme People's Procuratorate on suspicion of bribery and providing legal loans, Chinese media said. Media said also his case has been transferred to the Procuratorate for review and prosecution and is currently under further processing. Liu's arrest comes about a week after he was expelled from the ruling Chinese Communist Party following accusations of wrongdoings by the country's anti-corruption watchdog. The Central Commission for Discipline Inspection accused Liu of a range of illicit activities, including illegally granting loans, bringing banned publications into the country, and using his position to accept bribes and other perks. Liu is a prominent figure in China's financial circles, having previously held senior positions in the Central Bank and the Export-Import Bank of China. And Chinese President Xi Jinping has waged an exhaustive campaign to weed out corruption since coming to power in 2012. Xi's anti-corruption drive has ensnared a number of prominent financial executives at state-owned banks. In a separate development, the Philippines has accused China of conducting dangerous maneuvers in the disputed South China Sea after a Chinese Navy ship shadowed a Philippine Navy vessel and tried to cross its path. The Philippines said the incident took place on October 13 near Thitu Island, known as Pagasa Island in the Philippines, after the BRP Banquet issued a radio warning to the People's Liberation Army Navy planship 621. The planship then shadowed the Banquet, which was on a resupply mission, before attempting to cross the ship's bow at a distance of 320 meters, according to the Philippines Armed Forces in a Facebook post. It also posted a video of the encounter. Thitu, part of the Spratly Islands chain, was occupied by the Philippines in the 1970s and is now home to as many as 400 people. After the break, provisional results show Liberia's President George Weah and rival Joseph Boakai neck and neck, with votes from nearly 73% of polling stations counted. Stay with us for details on this and more right after the break.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Moving on now, President Yoweri Museveni has said that Ugandan police has foiled a bomb attack on churches by the Allied Democratic Forces ADF rebel group about 50 kilometers from the capital Kampala. Museveni wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the ADF made 2 bombs which they were planning to plant in churches in Kibibi, Butamambla, but he said that the devices were reported to police and defused. The ADF group has pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group. Earlier, Museveni, aged 79, who has ruled the country since 1986, said Ugandan forces had carried out airstrikes against ADF positions in neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. Elsewhere, Liberia's President George Weah and his rival Joseph Boakai are neck and neck, with votes from nearly 73% of polling stations counted, and provisional results show. Weah has 43.8%, while Boakai has 43.54% of the votes tallied so far following the 10 October elections. A runoff will be held if neither candidate gets more than 50%. Weah, a former football star, won a runoff in the 2017 poll with 61.5%. to Boakai's 38.5%. He had won the first round with 38.4% of the vote, compared with Boakai's 28.8%, suggesting that Boakai is faring better in this election. By Sunday, Liberia's Elections Commission had tallied votes from 4,295 of the 5,890 polling stations. The body has 15 days from the date of the election to announce the final results. If there is no outright winner, a runoff will be held on 7th November. More than 2.4 million Liberians, many of them first-time voters born after the 1989 to 2003 civil wars, have registered to elect the president, members of the House of Representatives, and half the Senate. Local and regional election observers reported peaceful polls and a high turnout across the country, but cited problems such as voting delays at some polling stations. Moving on now, South Africa's military has ordered home 8 soldiers accused of sexual misconduct in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The suspects were part of a United Nations peacekeeping mission in DR Congo's troubled east. The UN said the men have been linked to systematic, widespread violation of the organization's rules. It had received reports that the soldiers ignored a curfew and visited a bar where transactional sex occurs. In a separate development, Indonesia's constitutional court has upheld the minimum age requirement for presidential and vice presidential candidates. It said there could be an exception for those who have held or been elected as regional leaders. The decision leaves the door open for President Joko Widodo's eldest son, who is 36, to run for vice president in elections due next February. Chief Justice Anwar Usman, who is the president's brother-in-law, led a panel of 9 judges who on Monday rejected the petition to lower the minimum age to 35 years from 40. The judges said determining the age limit should be left to Parliament and that the petition had no reasoning according to law. The president, popularly known as Jokowi, is unable to contest the upcoming presidential and parliamentary elections, having served the maximum 2 terms in office. He was first elected in 2014, and the ruling Democratic Party of Struggle, PDIP, has selected Ganja Pranowo, the governor of Central Java, as its candidate for the February 2024 elections. Prabowo Subianto, defense minister in Jokowi's government, is also expected to run for the top job again. Before Jokowi appointed Prabowo to his cabinet in 2019, the 2 men were considered arch rivals. The constitutional challenge to the age limit for presidential and vice presidential candidates on the basis that it was discriminatory fueled speculation that Jokowi's son, Gibran Rakebumeng Raka, was considering a run for the vice presidency, perhaps as Prabowo's running mate. Now, the court has received several 7 judicial review requests calling for the age limit to be lowered, including from the Indonesian Solidarity Party, known for its appeal to younger voters. Jokowi's youngest son, Kaisang Pangarep, recently became the party's chair. In a separate development, the western province of Herat in Afghanistan has been hit with a magnitude 6.3 earthquake. Its third since powerful quakes on October 8 killed more than 2,000 people. The United States Geological Survey said the quake hit just after 8 a.m. on Sunday, with the epicenter 33 kilometers northwest of Herat City, the capital of the eponymous western province. It was followed by a magnitude 5.5 aftershock 20 minutes later. It said the effect of Sunday's earthquakes is still unclear, but media agency quoted Abdul Qadim Mohammadi, head doctor at Herat Regional Hospital, as saying so far 93 injured and 1 dead have been registered. Another magnitude 6.3 earthquake had hit about 40 kilometers northwest of Herat 8 days ago, with several strong aftershocks of lesser magnitude following. Now, the earthquake had proven devastating, leveling a large number of rural homes and killing 2,053 people, according to Taliban officials. Moving on now, Australia has overwhelmingly rejected a plan to give greater political rights to indigenous people in a referendum. All 6 states voted no to a proposal to amend the constitution to recognize First Nations people and create a body for them to advise the government. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the feat was hard. Now, opposition leader Peter Dutton said the result was good for the country. The referendum, dubbed The Voice, was Australia's first in almost a quarter of a century, with the majority of ballots counted. The no vote led yes 60% to 40%. Its rejection followed a fraught and often accurate campaign. The supporters said that entrenching the indigenous peoples into the constitution would unite Australia and usher in a new era. No leaders said that the idea was divisive and would create special classes of citizens where some were more equal than others, and the new advisory body would slow government decision making. And they were criticized over their appeal to undecided voters with a "don't know, vote no," and accused of running a campaign based on misinformation about the effects of the plan. And with that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News. You've been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. My name is Xavier Robert. Bye for now.